know it's past what I have. I have 30 something.
41, so it's 42.
Yeah, we're on 42. Good morning, YouTube community. We are starting a little late today. It's 10:20. We are here for our Wednesday. And I hope the volumes today are better. I've gotten feedback that we drop our voices and people can't hear, so I've tried to turn the volume up on the recording. And then also, it's not working today. I was unable to sign on, so sorry about that. Anyway, we are reading Jeremiah 42, and it'll become clear, I think. It's amazing the confused and convoluted world in which both the writer and the people who think of themselves as the children of Yahweh, the followers of this God, how convoluted their life is, where they turn for some idea of what God is doing and saying. And verse 42 is a really good example of it. Somebody like to read?
Okay.
All right.
Jeremiah is survivors not to migrate. Then all the commanders of the forces and Johanan, son of Kareah, and Jesaniah, son of Uzziah, and all the people from the least to the greatest approached the prophet Jeremiah and said, "Be good enough to listen to our plea and pray to the Lord our God for us, for all this remnant. For there are few of us left out of many. As your eyes can see, let the Lord your God show us where we should go and what we should do." The prophet Jeremiah said to them, "Very well, I'm going to pray to the Lord your God as you request, and whatever the Lord answers you, I will tell you. I will keep nothing back from you." They in their turn said to Jeremiah, "May the Lord be a true and faithful witness against us if we do not act according to everything your God sends us through you. Whether it is good or bad, we will obey the voice of the Lord our God, to whom we are sending you in order that it may go well with us when we obey the voice of the Lord our God." At the end of 10 days, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. Then he summoned Johanan, son of Kareah, and all the commanders of the forces who were with him, and all the people, from the least to the greatest, and said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, to whom you sent me to present your plea before him. If you will only remain in this land, then I will build you up and not pull you down. I will plant you and not pluck you up, for I am sorry for the disaster that I have brought upon you. Do not be afraid of the king of Babylon, as you have been. Do not be afraid of him, says the Lord, for I am with you, to save you and to rescue you from his hand. I will grant you mercy, and he will have mercy on you and restore you to your native soil. But if you continue to say, 'We will not stay in this land,' thus disobeying the voice of the Lord your God, and saying, 'No, we will go to the land of Egypt, where we shall not see war, hear the sound of the trumpet, or be hungry for bread, and there we will stay,' and hear the word of the Lord, O remnant of Judah. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, if you are determined to enter Egypt and go to settle there, then the sword that you hear shall overtake you there in the land of Egypt, and the famine that you dread shall follow close after you into Egypt, and there you shall die. All the people who have determined to go to Egypt who settle there shall die by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence. There shall have no remnant or survivor from the disaster that I am bringing upon you. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, just as my anger and my wrath were poured out on the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so my wrath will be poured out on you when you go to Egypt. You shall become an object of execration and horror, of cursing and ridicule. You shall see this place no more. The Lord has said to you, a remnant of Judah, do not go to Egypt. Be well aware that I have warned you today that you made a fatal mistake. For you yourselves sent me to the Lord your God, saying, pray for us, the Lord our God. And whatever the Lord our God tells us, and we will do it. So I have told you today that you would not obey the voice of the Lord your God in anything that he sent me to tell you. Be well aware then that you shall die by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence in the place where you desire to go and settle. Oh, no, Jeremiah, please. Enough.
No.
My God.
Only mouthpiece of God. Is nobody thinks to pray to God themselves
Right.
for guidance? What are we talking about here?
The one who knows it all.
Exactly. Well, that's upsetting. So, but why should they be any different from any of the rest of us? Nobody knows.
Get on to the Zoom.
Oh, she called the office.
Tell you.
Oh.
Are you kidding? Sign in.
Will that delay of 30 minutes actually mean?
Well, it'll just mean that you're a scammer and you're impatient, so you'll run on to
Exactly.
something else.
So what if you're a scammer and are
very patient.
determined? Right. It's not going to really
Swear,
help.
and I only tried once. Oh, sorry, I forgot. We're on.
That'd be a lesson.
Colette, I know you're watching now, Colette, so I'm sorry, my Zoom has booted me out and I can't get on for 30 minutes, so I'm glad you have, indirectly, you've met Nicole, and I understand Nicole helped you to get on to YouTube. So, hello and welcome. We just heard from Jeremiah that God...
I'm sorry, it is last pass. I just say last pass.
Last pass, that's the...
Yeah, it is. It's L-A-S-T pass.
So what do you say, what do you have to say about this?
Oh,
Look at this relationship between Jeremiah and the people, first of all.
yeah, well,
And sometimes I wonder how many people are standing there.
exactly. Because there was no TV, there's no phones, there's no internet. So how much of this message is getting out, to the regular people
Well,
in...
plus, I don't know how many people
the
are
countryside.
left. It says a remnant. These are the people that are left after the Babylonians swept through,
Yeah,
took all the educated people and took, and they're there. They're living there,
No.
but they're not doing well.
but
And so-
half the kingdom is still there, and they're not the educated people. So they're not going to read, they're not going to, how are they going to get this message?
So, I
They're not.
understand that issue, but for the people who do get the message, the message is,
Stay here.
they promised, whatever Jeremiah said God said, that they would do what Jeremiah said under punishment if they didn't. They said that. They said, bring it on. We'll do exactly what you tell us God said.
Dummies.
And and so God says, God God says,
Stay put.
stay put.
At least that's what Jeremiah is saying, God
God
says.
says stay put. Now, the commentary I read says, this conversation is important because in the resettlement of Jerusalem, the people who went to Egypt were informed, you are no longer Israelites. You are no longer Hebrews. You are no longer part of the remnant. You're a remnant of nothing.
Right.
Because you
Left.
surrendered your citizenship in this community.
And the people who did stay ended up being the ones that would carry on the culture, the word of God, the new
Yeah.
teachings.
Well, they did it for a while,
Yeah.
so they went to war with the people who had gone to Persia and came back and said, no, we are the legitimate heirs.
Right, so was God wrong or Jeremiah? Who got the message? No. I'm sure this is written in retrospect and not really.
Yeah, I'm sure it is too,
Jeremiah,
but you try to dust off what is the theology that's
Yeah.
going on. What is the idea of God? What is their experience of God? Here, more than anywhere else, we have this God who says, do this or you will die. Do this or I will punish you. Do this or I will. And it's through Jeremiah.
So then through the ages, was the message supposed to be the same? Stay there no matter what? Don't be the Jewish diaspora in the world because things will happen and then the Holocaust happens and everybody wants to get back? And you can't really go back the way things you think were, or, So some of these messages are like, are you not who you are no matter where you go? And can you not talk to God on your own and ask for guidance from God? Do you need Jeremiah to be an intercessory figure, or
Well, I
what's
think
the
what
deal with
Jeremiah
that?
is saying is, where are the signs that you trust God? So where are the signs? And he says one of the signs that you trust God is to stay put. To stay there, trust God for the food and all the rest of it. Isn't this the lesson of what it means to be Hebrew? You trust in God. I'm going to stay here and trust in God. Well, I don't know. I know I'm running ahead, but in this whole complicated conversation and story, what's interesting is, so that was what, verse 42. Now, okay, it's in our verse. What does this mean? If you will only remain in this land, then I will build you up and not pull you down. I will plant you and not pluck you up. I am sorry for the disaster that I brought upon you. What?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
What? I'm sorry for the disaster I brought upon you? This is the word of the Lord. Do not be afraid of the king of Babylon. I'm with you to save you, to rescue you from his hand. Well, they didn't get saved or rescued. The rest of the people didn't. Babylon came, Nebuchadnezzar did whatever he wanted to do, headed off with the people he wanted, and
Right.
left the rest of them behind.
Okay.
I just keep thinking in terms of whether to stay or whether to go. So many times, if you're in a situation, even a marriage, that it's not working, you stay and somehow or other go through with whatever, or there's so many times when you have this decision whether to stay in the situation you're in or to try to find something better. Is that not a good thing to do?
Wouldn't they both be examples of faith and trust? Right? I mean, I certainly know in my divorce it certainly was. I committed my life into God's hands and said, I'm going to go the best I can do for where to go from here on out. And at the time, it became a great feeling of, I could put my faith into practice. But, there were lots of people who said, well, you should have put your faith into practice another way. You should have stayed, or you should have tried to make it better. Well,
What you didn't do was ask someone to pray to God for you.
Right.
To make up their mind.
Yeah, I'm thinking also
Which is
the
crazy.
religious decision that both you and I made to change religions. Why not stay
That's true.
it
I never
with
thought of
what
it that
you,
way.
and, fight for what you believe and try to change that, but, so,
excellent example.
For me, it was like, it's all the same, but I like this version of the same. It didn't seem that very different.
you feel closer to God with what you chose. And I think that to me, because when people say that, I don't feel comfortable where I am, but, if I do change religions, I just say, closer to God. That's why I have trouble. I
Did
think
you
with
feel
this,
about changing? I mean, did it make a big difference? Because
absolutely.
you're still in the Christian fold.
Yeah, but it's a
It's
world
two
of
Christian folds.
It's just, the whole outlook is so different. Yeah, and, there was, it was certainly a process, a journey that, it's been a long time. But I just think that when we say that it's that there's only one way, I don't think to our life's, I don't want to say goal, that to make our lives meaningful. I don't think that we can say you must go through this, just like, so many times I think people, the expectations they have for their children, that, well, they must be a lawyer or doctor, or they must follow in my footsteps, they must have this, they must do better than I did, or, I don't,
I don't know, it was never important
Life is
to me.
what you
Maybe
make it,
I'm
I
just
think.
a loser all the way around.
I agree with you 100%. I went to a Christian Presbyterian college and majored in philosophy, and the only freedom of thought I felt was that my philosophy professor was very liberal and disliked by the administration of the college because, there's a very traditional kind of way of understanding God. God has a plan for your life, and if you find that plan, then you'll be successful. And my philosophy professor, I could still see him up there, putting a diagram on the board, so he put a chalk line that went straight up, and then it came to a Y.
Yeah.
He said he believed with all of his heart that the truest expression of the Hebrew Christian God is you come to the crossroads, you choose to go to the right, God will meet you there. You choose to go to the left, God will meet you there. I am with you always. And so this idea, my father, oh my goodness, I would say to my father, stop saying that. Because he would do baptism, and he would look at the parents and he would say to them, now I want you to understand that if you help your child to find God's plan for their life, and it doesn't matter whether they're rich or whether they're poor or whatever, but if you find God's plan and help them to find, that's success. And you have parented your child to success. And I go,
Another burden
I know,
on,
and I go,
on the
Dad,
parents.
Well, you,
plan, one plan?
right.
And whose plan?
Who's plan? Well, obviously, you go with the Yogi Berra plan. You know, you come to the fork in the road, take it.
You take it. Take
Don't
the
matter
fork.
where it's going.
Go where it goes. And so, it got to go back to, big life decision for me. Do I stay in my marriage or leave in my marriage? I never imagined that one of those choices was going to lead me away from God.
I think that's the way I felt too. There was like, there is nothing that I see that's completely at odds, except for the claim that Jesus, who I believe was a human being, was any more divine than I am or anybody else. And so that, and people said to me, well, you really think that makes a big difference? I said, to me it doesn't.
To you,
And
right.
at the time it made a big difference. But to me, I didn't think that I was going away from God or following something new that would be completely at odds with what I believed all my life. It just felt natural. I don't know. And people don't like you to say those kinds of things, because when they ask too, in Islamic get-togethers, when they have reverts, they call them, or converts as I call them, they'll say, what's your story? And when I tell them, I don't feel any different. They're waiting for this road to Damascus experience. And it's like, no, I didn't feel that. I just felt that it was the same path to the same goal, to the same, relationship with God. Only, some of the trappings have changed a bit, but not the essential relationship to God. It didn't change for me. Oh, people don't like it. They want you to give some kind of drama, beyond really what it was. The drama is with all the externals. Do you cover or do you not cover? How do you pray? Do you do that? That to me is fine. I'll go along with that. But to me, it's not the basic tenets, but it's not why I became Muslim. Oh boy, I can't wait to put a scarf on my head. That wasn't important to me. Or I want to please somebody else. A lot of people, especially women, revert, they say, because you're born Muslim and then you go away from it if you're following other religions. But people convert generally because they marry a Muslim man.
Yeah.
And for me, that wasn't the case either. So people are like, oh, all right. Well, would you prefer that, okay, I married somebody and, all right, I'll give in to please that person? Or are you doing it for yourself,
Yeah, and it's frustrating because there's so much religious language around the will of God. The will of God, the will of God. And Presbyterians, I actually don't think Calvin would agree with most of what became Presbyterian theology around predestination and all the rest of it. I think even here in this, okay, so the people say, Jeremiah, go find out God's will for us, right? And what do they end up doing? They end up doing what they believe they should do. And again, I say this in my confirmation classes. I'm a proponent of the big God theory. I'm not a proponent of the predestination. What I am, whither you goest, there am I with you. You have to, I think it's more difficult for human beings, instead of trying to determine God's will, figure out your own will. Figure out your choice. Find a way. And by the way, if you make a choice, and then you discover, oh,
it wasn't right.
I didn't really know myself. It's not working out. Then you go back and say, I take it back. and I've said this from the very first study in Genesis. Genesis reveals a God who is up for the adventure. Mm-hmm. The adventure of who you are, the choices that you make, the mistakes that you make, and the promise of grace and forgiveness is to keep you moving on the journey. Go and be yourself. I mean, I think that's what the words to the first woman and man, Eve and Adam, go, multiply, live the adventure. There's a great adventure in front of us. But this going to the prophet and saying to the prophet, look, go ask God what I should do.
Right.
We go, I don't know. Do you know what the guidelines of life are? Wherever you go, whatever you do, whatever career you take, keep these things in your best pocket. Compassion, mercy, grace, justice.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't forget to apply them to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Life is an adventure into the dark.
It doesn't have to be hard and onerous and awful. It does. Every surah chapter in the Quran, save one, starts with God is merciful, God is generous. What part of that are you not getting? It's drummed into you in each one. And astaghfirullah, you believe that God forgives everything.
And it's hardest to do that, I think, when life delivers something really hard.
Yeah.
When you have a child that dies, or
Of course.
or you've invested your whole life in a relationship for marriage and a dream, and then that person turns out to not be. And then you go back, and this theology smells like, I'm sorry, I don't really believe it.
Yeah.
I don't, and I don't know. I love a lot of what Jeremiah says, but here's where I become liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, come on. You people went to Jeremiah and said, tell us what God wants us to do. And we'll do it even on the pain of our lives. Well, first of all, why did you ask? Because you already had your mind made up
That
about what you were going to do.
say.
Why did you
Exactly.
ask?
Exactly.
Why didn't you?
Well, that's like what kids do to you.
It
Yes.
is.
They
It
do
is.
that.
Why didn't you
Do
just?
they ask?
Why didn't you
If
just?
they
Oh,
dare
they-
to ask, they already know what you're going to say. So, oh yes, a mom said.
Why didn't you just go to Jeremiah? I love they have this, shaman, this God talker. Why don't you go to Jeremiah and say to Jeremiah, look, we hate it here. We really hate it here. We hear bombs every day. It's like there were no bombs, but there were trumpets. We don't hear the sound of the trumpet, so the invasions aren't happening every day. We want to go. We want to go where Jesus went when he was in trouble. They didn't know Jesus.
No, I
but
was going to say, this is a
we
little
wanna-
bit
we
before.
want to go to Egypt. We want to go to the land where Abram and Sarah went.
We want to go to the land where things are probably a little easier. I think that's probably what they were
I
thinking.
think they were looking for that.
Yeah.
And
mean,
so
why stay where
just
it's
tell God that.
Yeah.
When you're talking to God, you tell God, we love you, God. We love you, and we want to be your people. But we're out of here. We are out of here. And so, what's wrong with that?
Okay. Well, that's what one of the titles was, Insincere Request,
Yeah.
on the commentary.
Right,
Yeah. Did they really mean it? No.
And that's a problem when you tie theology to geography. Does it really make, and they had that problem always.
Oh,
Where
always.
do you pray? At the temple or on the top of the mountain? Oh my God, so that divided the one kingdom from the other for a long time. Why? It's not like God is more sincere. I get it now. It's the Charlie Brown thing, the sincere pumpkin patch. But this idea that geography means something, God made the entire universe. What if we said, we're bailing on Earth, we're going to take the next flight out to Mars? Should we ask God about that? I don't know.
I think it's because, I'm talking for myself, but I think as a human being, our very existence is always tied to a location or to Earth. It's to Earth. I still remember the very first time I bought a house, and I lived in other people's houses and all that. And I remember after the sale, walking onto that piece of property and feeling full of gratitude and meaning because I own a piece of property.
I get that.
It's about, this is place. And so as creatures, you can see it in nature too. You can see that.
there's, but,
But I don't think God.
no, that's the problem. You get tangled
You
up in this idea of the God, you know, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were nomads. They moved.
Right.
They moved from place to place. They did not have the promise of place. Now, there was the promised land in the future, but I even think if you read carefully, they got that all screwed up too, because it wasn't a place where go through this with the concept of the United States, this manifest destiny. This was a land that was given. Oh my goodness.
Given to us.
It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. You know, if they
We
were,
discovered it. That's, you know, and when, you know, when you're a kid and they tell you Columbus discovered America, and then the Native Americans said, oh, really? Discovered it, huh?
Yeah.
We were here.
think how deep.
Kind of, we were here
I
first.
just say it. I think how deep
Sounds so-
into my being, how many times over and over and over it was rehearsed to me that white people discovered
Mhm.
America. Like the exclusivity of it, and the whole God, you know, is working with this people and brought us to this land, and it led to massacre and everything that God hates. So what?
Exactly.
And so I think, you know, learning to discern, finding discernment. What do I want to do? What do I really want to do? Stop blaming it on God. You know?
It's,
It's
yeah.
like,
Or did I leave the fleece out with the dew on it? I mean, it's some of the stuff that people contrive.
I used to say in the marriage ceremony, something that comes out of the book of Common Prayer, which is what God has brought together, let no person work to separate or put apart. I don't have any trouble with the idea that you are together because God, in guiding you, has brought you to each other. That doesn't say anything about what will happen next. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and it
You know.
should say, and when you really end up hating each other and unable to occupy the same space, you still have to stay together.
Yeah, and when you get to that
It's
part
crazy.
where you hate each other and you're beating your wife, remember what Jesus himself said. God gave Moses the writ of divorce because of the hardness of human hearts. It doesn't prove anything.
You know, even Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam followed that edict. Like, yeah, we don't like divorce, and I think God doesn't like divorce either. But when people cannot live together, and you've tried, you've given it a go, and it won't work, depart peacefully.
Right, for peace and for
Exactly.
life and for freedom and for the love of God, you go back out into life.
And give each other their due. For women in the position that women were in, dependent on the male, there were a lot of rules about, you know, you owe this person sustenance, and it should be fair. And, you know, of course, we're human beings, and that never happens.
No.
Well, it does occasionally, but it didn't happen through the ages. And look what's happening now. I mean, we're starting in our Wednesday night Hanukkah a seerah, a study of the prophet's life. And then, you know, we're studying it through Quranic verse. And, you know, the foundations are more equality for women. And it was true at the time. There was some earth-shattering, like, women can inherit. Women can have their own business. Women can be independent agents to a certain degree. Okay, that's great. It's not what we would think of today, but it was a massive step in even recently in Western culture, where you were the property of you, and when you got married, all your worldly goods went to your husband, and, you know. So they were ahead, but it quickly, because human beings administered the
Males.
bureaucracy, and look at Afghanistan. Women can't even leave the house. And if you do, you have to have your mahram, your male accompany you, whether, that could be your 5-year-old son, but you're not, now, Muslims generally here in the United States go, that's crazy, but this is how the stuff gets twisted, and it's not anywhere near what it was said. It's so far away, but this is what happens. These kinds of things happen. Oh, God says, because Jeremiah said, why?
There was a philosopher, I wish I could remember, I have to go look it up to see what his name was. There was a philosopher who said that life is like a river, and it's flowing. And like a river, all of the greatest and best discoveries and thoughts are like rocks. They sink to the bottom, and they stay there. And what comes down to us through time is like that foam that you see,
Goes over
that
the
floats on the top. So all of the best and deepest thoughts, I am convinced that Genesis reveals egalitarianism and equality between males and females.
Yes.
I think it's there. We keep the book. Why don't we read it?
I know.
And it's
Yeah.
frustrating because even in terms of the New Testament, Jesus was so radically egalitarian.
Absolutely.
And the early church, the first century church knew it.
Not only between the sexes, but between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, it was a y'all come
Yeah.
rainbow coalition. We gotta
Right, Barbara?
go through
Y'all
life
means y'all.
Y'all,
together. Y'all
I have
means
that sign
y'all.
here.
And yet, what do we do to it? I mean, some of the, I don't know, the passion banging around in my head was, Laura and I went to see Nuremberg last night.
Oh, was it, yeah, it was good?
It was not only good, but it's a tragic story, not just in the context of the massacre of the Jews, but the effort to try to hold these Nazi leaders accountable after they saw what they had done and how close they came in the Nuremberg trials to not convicting them.
Yeah.
And what's out in front in the dialogue, and I do trust it, I mean, it's beautifully written, but they say in the beginning, a lot of it is written from transcripts of this psychiatrist, this doctor who hung out there in the prisons awaiting the trial and tried to understand who are these people and what led them to be what they were.
What happened? Yeah.
And the result is they're us. Like, it's so scary how truth
That's
becomes...
why you need these movies, though. Yeah.
It's how truth becomes so packaged in such a way that you can't see through it. You can't, I don't know what else to say. It's just so discouraging. And then, you throw God in the mix of it.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You get religion and the idea that, but we talk to God. And then, what difference did it make? They asked God, God told them, and they said, nah,
Yeah, we don't.
you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna do that.
Well, to put it in terms of today, when people say Trump was sent by God to tell us what to do, and when he's doing things that are in exact opposition to what Jesus would have said and any of the other prophets, most of them, then how do you deal with that?
Well, God has changed what God has to say. That's different than this text. Here, God says, stay, make your life here, and the people don't. They leave, and then they get the warning as they're going, the shot over their head. You're going to be sorry. But in our lives, these people who, they were waiting, I wish I could remember the quote, but there's a conversation between, what was the guy's name? The Nazi, second in command under
Goebbels?
Goebbels.
Yeah.
There's a conversation between Goebbels,
Goebbels. I think it's Goebbels.
Goebbels.
It's a German.
Goebbels, but I think it was like
Goebbels.
He's talking to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is listening to him, trying to draw out. And he says, you know, he wanted to know from Goebbels, what was the power that Hitler had? And Goebbels says, well, the world left us destitute. We were decimated. And Hitler came along and gave us somebody to blame. And blame we did. And I can't help it. I'm sitting there. It's the year 2025. And I find it reverberating around in the walls of my world.
If you're upset with something in your life, Trump is telling us it's those foreigners that are coming in and they're not, you know.
Yeah,
And
I'll fix it. Only
I
I
can fix it.
Oh, he said that in the first campaign. And I thought, who
Here
listens
comes-
to a man who talks like that and doesn't worry about
And
what
that's
that
the
will mean?
problem. We all said, who would listen to this guy? Ha, ha, ha. But people did. And
They did and they do.
I imagine
Still
that's how
do.
Hitler came through, because we say now, how in the world could people have listened to that evil and violence? But they do. So how do you, I'm not, you know, you don't want to sound holier than thou, like I never believed Trump, but I didn't. And I'm hoping that there are more people that have just tolerated him rather than actually been acolytes, you know, but what do you,
Goebbels says,
what do you do?
he says that democracy, and first of all, he makes a big deal in his defense to the psychiatrist. We were elected. We were, all of us, elected. And he said we were elected to step into the weakness of democracy. We were elected because democracy is great when everything's great. But when everything isn't great, democracy cannot lead. It cannot lead. And so we moved in, elected, we were elected. He kept saying,
Yeah,
Hitler was elected by the people. But what we were elected to do
fraudulently, but.
was to reveal the weakness of democracy.
And let's face it, the Weimar Republic was pretty awful, but it was messy because it was more democratic
It
than
was,
what
and
came
that's
about.
exactly what comes
You know,
out,
they
like
had,
were.
you know, artwork that they considered was deviant. They had entertainment that was deviant. They had, you know, nobody was getting wealthy. They were all, except a few,
Yeah.
which they singled out and picked on. But, you know, so the Weimar Republic wasn't working because it was too soon after the whole overthrow of the government. It takes time to build a consensus and,
Well, and that's exactly,
And they-
he says in his trial, he says, the prosecutor says, did you feel called to eliminate the Weimar Republic? He says, absolutely we did.
yeah.
And he said, why? And he said, because democracy is too slow. Democracy is too weak. We needed the change now.
Right.
And I can't help it. So what's revealed? I've always said, you know, you open the Bible to read about God.
Oh, yeah,
So
no.
open the Bible to read about humans.
Yeah, exactly.
There's more revealing about humans here than there is about God. And especially humans who are in pursuit of God.
Mhm.
I don't know where I belong in the world anymore because I do not fit in with people who, you know, ask God to reveal God's will for your life.
It's like the conferring with the 8-ball kind of philosophy of life.
Oh,
Ouija
that was wonderful.
or
That was so
whatever.
easy too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you just go
Well,
like this,
unless it went, I doubt it.
and then you did it
Looks
again
doubtful.
and again.
Yes, looks doubtful.
Whenever it was something you didn't want to hear, you just kept doing it.
Looks doubtful.
But that means that something within yourself to examine, not blame, not say, oh, God led me to this ridiculous thing. It's like, think it through, like, take a little time, maybe.
Because there are times, I mean, if you put God in the picture with the human, that's one thing. But if you stay with the idea that, okay, I'm trying to decide, should I marry this person or not marry this person? And the person says, okay, I'm going to seek God's will in this. And they get married, and then it's a disaster. I think part of what we don't want to own is that even when we made the decision, we weren't sure. Like, we didn't, part of that whole idea of like, well, I'm going to see if it's God's will, is that then I can throw it off. Should I leave? Should I stay here, or should I go back to Egypt? Well, let's ask God. Because then if God...
Not my
really-
problem
No, that's right.
when it doesn't work out,
That's
yeah.
exactly right.
Blame it on God.
And Jeremiah says, you're making a mistake. You're not listening. You said you would listen, but you didn't listen. You didn't do, and that's the other thing, that people who make decisions and say, well, you know, God, whatever, they have hidden the unresolved part within themselves,
Right.
so they can't stand and say, you know what, I have made a decision. I've made a decision, and I'm going to go with this, rain or shine. If it doesn't work out, you know, it'll work out. Everything will be okay. Then trusting God to meet you where you go.
Exactly. And don't, have some humility and say, I made a mistake. What can I do to fix it? And know that it wasn't God's fault.
Yes.
But then
But
you
it's-
have to own it yourself.
Well, yes.
And that's not so easy for
But
humans to do.
It is not, and it's not easy to ask for forgiveness when you know you've done the wrong thing. I hate to blame certain individuals, but they keep showing this clip of, I forget where it even was, this woman who was the the engineer of it's not a subway because it goes down and it goes up into the neighborhood too, but she's in control of the train, and there's a camera there, and the train is packed with people, and here she goes.
She falls asleep.
She falls asleep, and she's asleep for a good length of time, and the whole time her foot, I guess, is accelerating, and everybody in the train is going, ah! She finally wakes up, they come up, emerge into the town, and you can see they're running right next. It looked like kind of the T, but I don't know where it was. They're running right next to a street with cars on it, and people, and she finally wakes up and she's trying to stop, but of course it doesn't stop on it. They stop though before anybody gets hurt. But there were people jostled around and knocked to the floor, and everybody's like, and she comes in and she says, it's okay, it's okay. She implied that it was a failure of the equipment.
Mechanical.
And people are like, but whoa, we're really upset. Don't be upset, calm down. Nobody got hurt, nobody died. And here she is blaming it on the machinery.
Of course.
But that's kind of like, when things go bad, blame it on God. It was not my fault, it was God. Of course, they had, unfortunately for her, they had the video. But we do that, that's a human thing, we don't want
I think that
to own up.
sometimes we need to be, I used to do this all the time when I was a teacher with high school kids and youth group. Go easy on, I made a mistake. Go easy on that. I mean, come on, we need to give each other a break and we need to give ourselves a break. Do you know the future?
No.
Can you see it? No, you cannot. And so, I think sometimes we go, well, I just made a really big mistake. You cannot attach this divine seeing into life which is not clear. Life is a mystery, and things come along, and you have to be careful in applying blame to yourself, and I also think you have to be very careful taking credit. You have to be very careful about that. Did you, give the season of the year so that the wheat produced more per stalk and therefore no, well, I planted at the right time, come on. Like, an awful lot of life, both its successes and its failures, are sort of like the jostling of the train, in life. And I think if we could own that a little bit more, and not be worried that means it'll make us lazy or something like that, but just, okay, here I am. Things have happened in my life. I made some decisions which now I look at and I regret, but I can't go back.
You hope that it gives you a better way of looking at the future.
Absolutely.
And
And it's not even always about learning from your mistakes, because you don't always see when you're lining up for the same thing. You don't see it. You do the best you can. That's why, therapists who get with children who are trying to resolve their hostility towards their parents, I used to think, oh, what a cop-out. But now I find myself doing the same thing. You can say, look, they are doing the best they can do with what they had.
absolutely.
And if you can't give them that, then what are you going to do about your own life? How are you going to handle how your own life comes out? You're going to pat yourself on the back till you break your arm? It's like doing the best they can. And that was a great relief with me in my really deep-seated hostility towards my mother. I just had so much anger towards my mother for how erratic and abusive she was as a mother. But as an adult, and now a parent, 5 kids, I can stand and I can look across and I can go, wow, I don't know how you weren't worse.
True.
And she learned to give herself a break. She would say, when my brother, who experienced most of the abuse from her, and my brother would lay out some of his agenda in front of her, they got to a dialogue, and my mother would say, and she meant it, I was out of my mind. I was out of my mind. You have to give me that. You're describing it, it was crazy, but I was out of my mind. And then, when she would say that, and I would come back around in conversation with her and say, Mom, and I'm so glad that you're not now.
Yeah.
Because thankfully, you came around enough and you could experience life enough and the grace of God enough to now enter into life more normal. But that was a hard journey for her,
Absolutely.
to forgive herself.
There's no one so self-righteous as a married couple that have no children, looking at people who have children. They always have a lot of info. Then they become parents and you go, okay. My parents always used to say, I hope when you're a parent someday, you have children just like you.
Oh, God.
That was the biggest curse.
Another of my philosophy professors who I really did not respect, I thought he was so shallow and so dumb. We used to get into debates in class in philosophy, and he'd get this look on his face, and he would say, oh, I don't want to talk to any of you until you have children.
Oh.
Because when you have children, it will take you to a level of thinking and understanding that you are not privy to. And we used to go back to our dorm rooms and go, who does he think he is?
Right.
Okay, just because he has kids. And you know what?
He's
I
right.
had heard his voice 100 times in my head. Yeah. What did having children have to do with it? Well, you got introduced to a level of reality that you never imagined was there. There is, yes, resulting order in the universe, but it is born out of chaos. Life is chaotic. It is. It's, wow.
Talk about loss of control.
Yes.
Oh, my kids did that to me once. I always thought I was like, now, reasonable, we'll talk about this, let's be fair. They actually took a tape, this is back when you had tape recorders, and taped me getting angry at them. And all I did was scream. And they were like, Mom, that's me? I mean, you really can't believe that you lose
Right.
control like that. But and so what was my response? At least I didn't beat you. I just yelled at you. But that's a form of abuse, all the yelling. So after that, I tried
Maybe
not
that's,
to yell.
maybe that's a sign, it just occurred to me, see if I can say what I just thought. This phrase of God saying, yeah, I'm sorry for the suffering I
Destruction.
brought on you. Maybe there's something of the full revealing of God the parent. That as much as we don't want, and I've said this out loud, we don't want to believe that God is not in control of everything. We don't want to believe that.
Right, right.
We, and so here, I don't know, here's God the parent. Is that not what parents will say?
This hurts me more than it will hurt you.
Well, if only that were
I
true.
never said that to my kids though, because
I always think in terms of God that I believe God was the creator and the sustainer, but I don't believe God was the redeemer,
oh, the Redeemer.
because I think a redeemer is someone who fixes it. And I don't think God is there to fix it for me. I think
What about
God
if
is
it's-
there to sustain
What does
me.
that do to the Christ story? What is that?
What is that?
Redeemer, you mean?
Yeah.
What did,
That aspect of God, he sent a part of himself to be your Redeemer on earth?
well, I believe that Jesus showed us, was a role model, and the fact that when he died, that he still lived, his ideas still lived. So
Okay, but he didn't die for your sin, in a way.
no.
No, see, that's where I get stuck always with the idea of the Trinity, like God is sending a part of himself to the earth to say,
I believe we're
I
all.
give you a blood
divine.
sacrifice? Yeah, me too.
I believe that we are all as divine as Christ was, but he did it better than I could ever.
He had more knowledge, he
Yeah, he's a
was,
role model to me.
but he was still just as divine. I don't know, I'm just way too egalitarian, I guess. So that is why, that was the big parting of the ways for me with Christianity, because I didn't believe in the, and it didn't help that I read Joseph Campbell, because so many cultures have this idea of the Redeemer,
Yeah, it's the same.
the blood sacrifice thing, and I'm like, oh yeah. And then people would say, well, you don't believe that, so what's the point? But it did make a difference to me at the time. And it's, I don't know.
It's interesting because I claim the word redeemer, but it's not the way you're talking
Right.
about it. Because to me, redeemer means freedom. And that
Okay.
what I need freedom from over and over and over again is my self-condemnation. And that Jesus, as the redeemer, forged the way. He plowed through the overwhelming crust of our need to condemn ourselves, of our need to be judges of ourselves. And Jesus himself stood with a unique divine presence. I'm not going to say, he even said to his disciples, you do more than I do. But he had a unique divinity presence that allowed people, in the metaphor of Egypt and the slavery and the captivity that comes with the world, he showed the way to freedom. And the most startling thing is that on the cross, he busted through the gate of freedom when he said, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And to me, that I have no trouble claiming Jesus as the Redeemer in that way.
but you're not meaning the way
Right.
some Christians, and I'm not saying I haven't even encountered it here, but you do, like you have to have somebody actually murdered.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. I rejected that a long time ago.
Yeah. So that's the
that-
part of Christianity I was like, I ain't going along with that. I mean,
The thing is, even the Jewish faith in the first century stopped the sacrifices in the temple. They stopped them. They began to realize that it was, first of all, a political and economic game that was being played, and it was used to oppress the poor even further, and they abandoned it. But in about, I don't know, it's about the late 3rd century, the thinkers in the Christian religion began to go back and adopt it again as a way of trying to explain, this is, I was working on this so much in my sermon on Sunday, and I said, doctrine leads you away from life. Just pay attention to life. Pay attention. Jesus was doing that all the time. The woman who was caught in adultery. Jesus, he liberates her because he stands against people who say what needs to happen here from God's point of view is that woman needs to be dead.
yeah, let's
To
get the
protect us from the
stones.
spread of sin.
Exactly, because everybody will be going out. and
I mean, and then what could have happened is, okay, so they kill her, and sin multiplies 1,000 times by their judgment against her.
First of all, they're murdering somebody.
Right,
So,
right.
Do you ever see,
Well, it
you've
wasn't
seen,
murder because it was a doctrine
and
that
right,
said,
it was proper and
you can do this.
God says to do that. You've seen the life of Brian, and where they say, and now he says some kind of a catchphrase, and that's when you're supposed to throw the stones.
Right.
Of course, he says, when I say the catchphrase, and he says it, they
Yeah,
throw
it's
all
worse.
the stones at him.
Well, you're not supposed to do it, but you said.
I mean, it just shows you how stupid, frankly, some of this stuff is. But you get caught up in, yeah.
Well, we were also taught for thousands of years that you had to be careful not to think outside the box here because, you could be rendering yourself into hell, which is another of my favorite. Why am I a Christian? All right, well, we're going to start heresy today.
Yeah,
pretty
there you
well,
go.
So thank you for tuning in. If you didn't
We're
know us
we're
before,
heretics in
you
3
know
different
who we are now.
religions.
Yes, that's right.
We,
In all
don't call us
All
not
religions have rejected us.
certainly interfaith.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yalla. Oh my.